Ready to talk hockey. Streaming from the Oilerslive studio. Subscribe or follow today.
Hey, Oilers Live listeners. It's Michael here. I'm your host. Another night, another loss, Oilers loss. Haven't been live for a little while. Hasn't been much to say, to be fair. We've been kind of going through this thing as Oilers fans right now that, let's be honest, we get a little bit up, get a little bit excited, and then we go and we lose a game to a team like New Jersey. And then tonight, St. Louis is a great team. So it's not like you can't put this in the same boat as New Jersey. That's for sure. St. Louis has a good team. They've proven that the second half of this season. But still disappointing nonetheless. I think we ended up with 15 shots tonight. And, we're really kind of at the edge right now. If you had any hope of a playoff push, we really kind of had to go, 9-1 in our last 10. So you'd have to say it's got to be 9-0. Yeah, let's be honest. I called it logically that we wouldn't be making the playoffs this year, but there's always that, as a fan, there's always that wee little glimmer of hope. And, we've got one more loss, and then we can kind of rest assured that playoffs are not in our future. Thanks, Brayley Brook on Twitter for joining in. And, yes, it is the edge of the cliff. No playoffs for this team this year. I was a little disappointed that McDavid didn't get his multi-point game to make it 9. What we're witnessing is something pretty incredible with this kid and Draisaitl. But really tonight, if you watch the game, I think everybody could agree, it doesn't take any superior analytic capabilities in terms of hockey to see that the team just didn't have it tonight. They just, they weren't really fully there. And looked at right from the start. I think they put up the graphic on the screen tonight. It was, into 8 minutes in both periods before we got our first shot. Not a great one. I think, yes, so Brayley on the Twitter feed says, hope always sneaks back in. And you're right. It probably won't this time again. So if you're listening, you can listen today if you want to go on the Simple Radio app and you want to listen, whether it's in your car or at home, you go to Simple Radio, search for Oilers Live, all one word. You can listen there. Or you can go on Twitter, of course, which fair bit of you listen on Twitter or YouTube or Facebook if you like, or even Twitch. We're on there as well. So happy to have all of you in today, and hopefully we get a little bit of discussion today around this team and some other things. We've got one thing we've got going right now is that there's a couple things really. I want to talk first about something Oilers Live related. I've got the Oilers Live Cup happening April 6th in Calgary, and all 100% of the proceeds are going to go to Autism Calgary, and those proceeds are earmarked specifically for projects designated for adults with autism. And so this is a great cause. And if you want to know why I picked adults with autism, it has everything to do with the first Oilers Live Cup. We chose autism, and we picked the Chinook Autism Society for one of our listeners and Oilers Twitter fellow Twitter folk. And as I was doing that and trying to raise awareness for autism, I realized that there's a real need for help with adults with autism. In fact, they're a sorely underfunded group right now. So if you get a chance, go to autismcalgary.com/OilersLive and you can register there. So that's what I'm going to say about that. Let's get back to the game. One of the things that, and if any of you listen to David Staples or read his articles, or Bruce McCurdy, he's been writing on it a little bit lately. Whether, he thought of it first or I thought of it first, who cares? I think we all thought about it, but this is something that's big for me, which is, the Oilers are missing puck-moving defensemen. And without puck-moving defensemen, we're not getting out of our zone. We're not creating any opportunities. I've been saying this kind of all year round, which is you have guys like Leon Draisaitl and Connor McDavid, and to some extent you've got Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and you're going to have those guys will have the ability to get out of their zone all on their own. We're hard on the likes of Reeder, and, rightfully so. I mean, he's not produced a single goal for us this year, yet he seems to make it into the lineup every game. Lucic, to name a couple. Brodziak even has, needed to at least pot a couple more in some of these guys. And the reality is that they can't get out of their zone unless they've got somebody to move them the puck. I have got a listener calling in, and I think it's Mr. Dursa. Let me just have a quick check here. Sorry, folks, to be a little bit choppy on here. Hey, you're on. Is it Mike?
Hey, no, it's Jeff.
Oh, hey. Sorry, I recognized the number, but I wasn't sure. How you doing?
Yeah, how are you?
Good.
Yeah, good. How are you guys? How are you doing?
Well, geez, I mean, after a game like that, I don't know. I mean, it was, I guess, it was frustrating tonight because there's still a little bit of hope left in me, which they squashed out of me tonight, thankfully, I think.
I was going to say you're one of the diehard faithful that still has a glimmer of hope.
Yeah, logically, I knew
anything out of it.
Yeah, logically, I knew that they weren't in the race, right? I mean, the odds are slim, but you always hope for the underdog a little bit, and we're certainly the underdog this year. And so, I kind of had it. You listen to Stauffer every day, and that guy never gives in. Right. And, I certainly, I'm not, maybe not, and I don't have any beef against Stauffer, but he's definitely a homer. I mean, he finds the good in everything until they're not an Oiler anymore. He gets paid by the, he gets paid by you know who. So he's got to be the voice of positivity. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and that's fair. I get that. But so I buy into that a little bit sometimes. I mean, I want to believe that this team's going to win. I really do. That's what being a fan is all about, right? But tonight,
absolutely, and
they didn't show.
Yeah, tonight was pretty tough, and you're right. Like it's, I think at this point in the season, I think logically, they're out. But what you're looking for is obviously things to build on to next season. So you're looking at the chemistry with Gagne coming back and adding to that. I mean, Kassian. I mean, as dreadful as this game was, Kassian had a strong game. You could argue he showed up. So yeah, I mean, you're always looking for glimmers of hope towards the end to give you a little bit of a good footing heading into next season. So at this point, you're looking for anything.
Yeah, and that's kind of it. And maybe that's what makes games like tonight even more disappointing is outside of Kassian and a little bit of Gags. It was really, we didn't see anything. There was no hope in this game, right? I mean, it's not like we, Yeah, I just didn't feel like we took anything from this game other than our team is sorely out of talent, right? Like
Yeah.
the Blues made us look terrible, and at the hands of Perron, no less, right? You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, and Maroon, like
yeah,
Maroon had a good game coming back, and I mean, you look at and Jaden Schwartz, he potted his hat trick, which usually a player would be pretty ecstatic, but he kind of just like shot it in. It was like, yeah, okay, hat trick, whatever. He was pretty anticlimactic when he scored a hat trick, but yeah, Perron and Maroon both had good games against us, and those are two players that. You could argue Maroon didn't really show up in the playoffs a few years ago, but both those guys are pests. They get into the dirty areas, and those are players that maybe you could go either way. But I know for me, those players were players when they left at the time. You were kind of like, oh, I don't know if we should have let those guys go, but it's always the players when they leave for some reason always come back to bite us in the ass. So they did tonight.
yeah, and players should, I mean, and that makes some sense, right? I mean, you've played enough hockey in your life too, right? When you play an old teammate or an old
Oh yeah,
team, I mean, you get up for those games. I mean, there's something to be said about that. And to that point, right? You look at Larson against New Jersey. That was maybe one of his worst games of the season. I actually,
yeah,
speaking
yeah.
of Larson, do you think there's something wrong with him? I mean, he's the last.
Yeah, he's
Something's wrong. I
he's
just
he's
he's
definitely struggled. Like
yeah
last year, you could obviously say like the passing of his dad was a big thing in his life. And even I can't remember if it was last year or this year where he said he was just playing the worst hockey of his life. I think it was the beginning of this season or halfway through.
yeah
And yeah, you got to wonder whether it's an injury. I don't know, but like that game against New Jersey, like you say, his positioning is just off. So I don't know if an injury would make him be off position like that, or what it is. But yeah, you're right. He is off, and he's not playing that nasty style. Like usually in the corners, he's giving the guys some pretty healthy cross checks in the corners and stuff, and he's just not there. So that's a good point. I don't know really what's going on with him.
he really and he's given it away down low a number of times.
Yeah,
It highlights the fact every time, and I, you know what, I'm not. There's a whole ton of folks, as you know, on Twitter that would burn Russell at the stake. I'm not one of them.
yeah, yeah.
I've not felt that Russell has been terrible for the Oilers. I don't know if he's worth the contract we've got him on, but he at least as well in the last 4 or 5 games has highlighted to me the problem with our puck movement on defense. I think back to that New Jersey game where there was a one instance where he tried to make a pass completely not even close, like it would not be tape to tape if there was nobody in the arena, and
Yeah.
then he gets the puck back, thankfully. And then he just throws it sort of all the way up the boards, only to get back to him one more time. So you figure third time's a charm. And then he flips it in the air all the way down the ice for an icing. And
Yeah.
and then and I'm a Nurse fan, but he can't. I mean, it's the same thing with him. He either does that slap shot around the boards, which I don't think has worked for him once this year. So I'm not sure why the coaches even allow him to do that. He's good on the rush if he's rushing the puck, but then he always, and I'm no better when I play hockey. I shoot the puck great, but he does that rush end to end and shoots it right into the numbers or right into the crest of the goalie, and that's no good for anything either, right? And so we've got a serious problem on the back end. and we've got a serious problem up top. But I just
and goaltending too. Like
yeah,
it's
yeah,
Koskinen's showing. He's showing moments of brilliance, but even that, I think it was Schwartz's first goal where he came out of the corner and went glove high. Like Koskinen's on his knees,
oh,
and the puck's in the corner. So I don't. You're looking at that goal and you're like, why is he even on his knees? And he should be upright, ready to go to face the shooter. And so yeah, I'm not too sure. A lot of areas. I was talking with some friends on text message and just saying, like, you get a couple games in a row and you lose to Toronto by, I think we lost by 1 goal. I think we kind of made it interesting toward the end, but it was Toronto kind of had their way with us. And when you play a game like this, it really puts things into pretty harsh perspective because the team flew in. They were in Vegas. They lost, and we all kind of anticipated that loss.
Yeah.
And they flew into St. Louis Sunday night. So they had all day yesterday and then today to regroup and to get ready for this game. And yeah, I mean it puts things in pretty harsh perspective. And so like we tying this into earlier in our conversation about at the end of the season, looking towards positives, building into next year, after a game like this, it's pretty humbling, and you realize that we got a lot of work to do.
Yeah, and that's just it. But now, do you think though that this scares away the potential GMs in the league, or do you think my actual feeling on it, and I was thinking about it today, is if I'm a GM, I am still sort of itching to get at this team and do what I can because I see there are prospects in the system, right? And then and of course you've got McDavid and you've got Draisaitl and you've got some of these guys that we're just sort of blessed to have as Oilers fans. Now, I mean, there's parts missing. Obviously, we got on defense, we're missing a ton of parts. On forward, we're missing a ton of parts. But I feel like if you have the right guy, you got a guy with a healthy enough ego and that thinks he can get it done. Maybe you can, and maybe we got enough prospects in the system. Like if we're sorely missing puck moving D. Well, Ethan Bear's doing well with Bakersfield right now. Of course, you've got Jones down there, who we know can move the puck. You've got guys coming up.
You got Bouchard coming up.
Yeah, Bouchard.
Eventually.
Yeah. And you've got and you might even have some forwards that go. Curry actually has looked half decent since he's been up. I missed early though in the game. What happened to Kara? Why was he not in the lineup?
I believe he was a late healthy scratch either before warmups or just after. I didn't catch that either. I just saw the tweet that what's his name was put back in the goalless wonder.
Reader.
Name is escaping right now.
Yeah,
yes, because he was originally supposed to be scratched.
Yeah,
and then Kara. I don't know what happened there. But you're right. Like I think in terms of a GM, you got to think, there's not very many jobs out there. So you got to think that whoever's coming in is going to jump at the opportunity, no matter how difficult it is. And I think you just got to build a little bit more. I mean, you kind of a different organization, different kettle of fish. But you look at what Carolina did, and I just watched a tweet of Brendan Moore coming into the locker room and really pumping up his team, and I mean they got some jam going on with that team and that organization right now.
Yeah.
Surge aside, they're building something inside that locker room, and you know what, Justin Williams is doing a really good job of keeping that room loose, and he brings that veteran experience, but he's kind of leading that group. He's keeping it loose. Obviously, again, it's tough to compare the two because Carolina, there's arguably no expectations there, whereas in Edmonton, there's always extremely high expectations. So does a culture like that flourish in a market that demands excellence? That's tough to say. But I think you're right. I think you get a GM in here with a game plan and knows what they want to do. I think you can get it to work. I think you're right. There are pieces in play. Obviously, you got to do some work on the off season, but I just think you got to get in there and establish some sort of really good work ethic and battle. And Hitch kind of did that off the start. You could see it. They were playing more of a conservative style. They weren't scoring. McDavid wasn't flying around like a million miles an hour like he used to. He was trying to rein McDavid in to play as much defense, but that kind of quickly fell apart. A dozen games into his tenure there. So I don't know. We're gonna have all summer to debate this, and and I'm really looking forward to debating this in the locker room come April 6th, which is kind of the main reason why I'm calling, is to see how things are going planning for the game.
Yeah, so and for those of you that don't know, maybe I should have introduced you. This is Mr. Jeff Nash. He is the guy that does rinks around the league, which if you haven't been to his YouTube page, you need to go. It's great. You've been doing some great work on there, by the way. I love watching, and looking at some of the different rinks around the league, the ones that I've not been to, and then, comparing it to the ones that I have been to kind of see, if I got the full experience. So Jeff, of course, does that. And so he's also been a great supporter of the Oilerslive Cup. We had the one in Edmonton, pre-Battle of Alberta in Edmonton, which was a really great time. I had a blast, and we had some really good Twitter folks out for that. We have now, and this is on April 6th is game time. So we're not too far away, I guess. A couple weeks away. The Saturday of the final regular season game of the year. We'll call it the put us out of our misery game, and hopefully we. I'm
in
hoping,
both games.
No doubt. I'm hoping that it's the game that puts Calgary in a playoff spot against Vegas in the first round, and the Oilers come out the victor. I always get excited no matter where we are in the standings for Battle of Alberta. I always hope we win. That one's meaningful no matter what. But we've got, right now, we've got about 12, I think it's 12 skaters registered. But I know of a number of more that are still going to register. We've got two goalies. One's your friend of yours, right? And he's coming out. We have raised so far for Autism Calgary and projects that support adults with autism. We've raised about $500 so far. So that's great. That every dollar I'm sure counts to something, and so when that's all said and done, and Autism Calgary was obviously a willing participant, and they're going to, as I said, they're going to put every dollar that we raise through this game towards projects for adults with autism. So if you're listening, if you're going to listen to the recorded version of this podcast, go to autismcalgary.com/OilersLive/ and you can, there's a registration link on there, but there's also a donation link. Donations are voluntary. I'd love for you to donate, but at the same time, I also want to see as many Oilers fans out playing some hockey and having some fun as we can. Game goes at 4 p.m. on game day at the Max Bell Arena in Calgary, which is just off the Deerfoot, and it's a good, a quick 10-minute drive to the Dome. It's 5 minutes away from my house.
Pretty close. Yep.
Yeah, actually, I can.
Oh, nice.
I can almost see Max Bell from my house. I'm right across the Deerfoot from the Max Bell, so it's a good distance for me. I am not inviting anybody over. Maybe a couple of people.
Oh, too late. Too late. We're just inviting ourselves over.
That's right. Yeah, I invite everybody over. No, you know what? It's going to be a blast. I think I'm going to keep doing this, I think, and hopefully we get some momentum. I think it'll always be easier to do in Edmonton for obvious reasons. Maybe in future years, if the Oilers are doing better and this game has more meaning, there'd be more people out. But I don't think we'll have any trouble getting enough skaters going, and hopefully we raise some money too. But
no, it's a free game of hockey. You can't argue with that. And just for anyone listening, so I used to live in Calgary on and off for better close to 10 years. And actually, you and I had chatted briefly about this too, but anyone who's listening, I played a lot of hockey, but also dealt with a lot of nonprofits in Calgary, and Autism Partnership was one of them. And so that's why this one intrigued me to be a participant in, is because I used to be a recreational therapist, so I used to work with kids and saw firsthand how this stuff impacts these families, so it was great. And there's going to be 4 guys. I used to drive, another part of my job was I used to drive like a 15-passenger van, and the owner of the company, Will Garth, who I messaged you about earlier.
Oh yeah.
He's a Flyers fan, but he big hockey guy, and his sons are coming out. I reached out to him because I thought, well, I haven't seen him in a while, but obviously there's a direct link to what this game's about, and some people and connections that I have in Calgary still. So it's going to be a pretty cool game for me personally, but for all of us, just to have fun, because the last game was really a lot of fun. And if Mike does call into the show, he keeps telling me to simmer down, but if he does call, just remind him that he tweeted out I think he scored like 8 goals in a father-son game. So
That's right.
I'm not sure who has to simmer down there a little bit, but anyways, we're having a good long thread of this game chirping each other. It was pretty good, so I can't wait to see him on the 6th.
Yeah, it should be a lot of fun, I think, yeah, I'm sure. Somehow, actually, I ended up disabling the Periscope feed. So hopefully, all right, I'm gonna have to just hold on. There's we're still live on a number of other platforms, but I've killed the Periscope feed. I wonder if I can.
Nice. Well, I'll while you're figuring that out. I just want to also give you a shout out on the episode on the game fixing, or the match fixing, whatever they called it. Because I've always said for the longest time that hockey can't be immune to this for anything. Like I remember there's a documentary on Netflix about that, and they go through baseball, soccer, or football. Baseball, pretty big in that league. And then, believe it or not, sumo is not immune to any of that. So I found it really interesting that you tackled that topic and got that guest on to talk about it a little bit more, because I think when we all think about game fixing, it's always about you think it has direct it affects the outcome of the game, whether it's a win or a loss, or a series and that thing. But he was kind of mentioning on how it's not necessarily that; it's about the little things in the game that people bet on that don't really have an outcome or don't affect the outcome of the game, but it has, effects on the betting community. So I thought that was really interesting, and I think you did a really good job on that. So anyone listening, if they haven't listened to it already, have a listen on that, because I think you did a really good job on that episode.
Yeah, it was, I learned a lot. Of course, I always get the benefit that I get to talk to these folks offline as well. And so, talking to Dale just offline too, and understanding some of the little things that were going on as well are kind of neat. But when I did the research, by the way, for that particular episode, I was shocked at how many people had written articles about how match fixing, just couldn't happen in hockey. And
that's a common argument.
Yeah, and so I hadn't even considered, right, like the prospect of match manipulation, right? Which, I mean, that's what you're talking about right now. The match manipulation is probably a bigger thing, and then the prospect that like one of the things that people talk about when they say match fixing is not going to happen is they're talking about these are pro athletes and they're making millions. Why would they ruin that for a couple extra dollars? And the reality is quite often either in football anyway, they're groomed from a very young age. Which was kind of interesting. But then B, I mean, it could be, anything like some type of extortion or blackmail or anything like that. It was a really good learning experience for me, and I'm hoping for those listening and for yourself that I get a chance to do more episodes like that. While the Oilers obviously are down in the down in the dumps right now, I'm going to focus the Heavy Hockey podcast on some issues around hockey, and maybe not always issues, but different things around hockey. Next up, I intend on doing a primer on fantasy hockey. So hopefully that goes well. I've got some feelers out there for some good guests. If you think of anybody or suggest anybody that's really kind of has their are knee deep into the fantasy hockey, let me know, because that would be that's one that I'm interested in. I actually don't play any fantasy hockey. I don't know about you. Do you?
Yeah, neither do I. I don't. The extent of my hockey pool is when the Stanley Cup playoffs finally start. The NHL has that bracket that they always post, and you set your teams, how many goals are scored, and you kind of lock it in, and you don't touch it the rest of the playoffs. And I don't have enough time to go and set lineups and all that kind of stuff.
I'm in the same boat there.
I do. Yeah, so I just don't have time. I don't have time. I'd rather watch the game and just enjoy it rather than like worrying about, oh crap, I forgot to set my lineup and all that kind of crap. So I don't really gamble that much. So it's kind of a new world to me as well. Simpler the better for me. So yeah. But anyways, I'm going to let you go. I've got to go and take care of some stuff too. I'm on vacation the election was called today in the province, and I work for the government, so I'm taking off for a couple of weeks for vacation and escape the inevitable Twitter feud that's going to happen in the next 4 weeks.
Well, that is one thing I refuse to do on my Twitter feed is discuss politics, and won't do it here either on a live episode. We'll stay away from that. I know.
Absolutely.
I've seen both sides. Anyway, thanks for calling in, Jeff. I'm looking forward to seeing you in a couple weeks. We're gonna have some fun. We'll be doing the draft hopefully in about a week and a half, and we'll get the teams all squared away. So you enjoy the rest of your
thanks for having me on, and
enjoy the rest of your vacation.
I'm gonna enjoy my vacay, and those who are listening, I've already pre-loaded up my episodes of Rinks Around the League for the next couple of weeks. I just did Pittsburgh, so if you haven't watched that one, Pittsburgh is a good one. There's a good little bonus ending on that about our run-ins with Trump. We ran into him a few times, depending on what your political affiliation. We won't get into that. Ran into him a couple times, and if you watch the end of the episode, I kind of show some pictures of behind the scenes of that experience, and then we're off to St. Louis, ironically, next week. Yeah. And San Jose, the episode after that. So. Feel free to go on and check it out and subscribe if you can, and any support's appreciated. And yes, I will keep in touch, and hopefully we'll see what the teams will turn out. And we'll be down in Calgary on the 6th. Looking forward to it.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks again, Jeff. Talk to you soon.
All right, take it easy.
Yeah, and for those listening, that was Mr. Nash. He does Rinks Around the League, a YouTube channel that you really should subscribe to and get the update on all of the Rinks Around the League. He at one point had a job that took him to every NHL rink and had an opportunity to kind of get to understand them, and he's done some really good work there. Very interesting. Also, as I said, if you're going to visit any NHL arena, that's a site you should go to. So again, rinks around the league. And of course, we were talking about the Oilerslive Cup, April 6th in Calgary. So back to the game. I know we've got, sorry everyone for, I somehow I lost the Twitter feed, but we're back on now. Facebook and YouTube stayed live, as well as Twitch, and also if you're listening on Simple Radio, is great at Oilers Live. Most of you all were there. Well, those folks that are on the Twitter Periscope feed lost it. So that's too bad. Anyway, we're talking. Jeff and I talked a little bit about the hockey, and I'm curious, in the chat, wherever you are, what your thoughts are. Did you have hope going into tonight still, or was all that hope gone? I can tell you, and I tweeted, I had a tweet that, was, got a few likes, which, is exactly how I feel. I mean, logically, even probably 5-6 games ago, I had called this, a no-show for the playoffs this year. But there was, a distant hope in me that we would pull something miraculous off, in which, we certainly haven't shown that we're, even capable. If you had a chance, or if you have a chance, you can go listen to the Oilers Now broadcast. You might have listened to it live. Craig Simpson was on today. I always feel a little bit like Craig Simpson kind of has something against the Oilers now, as if it's, just out of pure disappointment. But, he was talking some truth today, and the reality is there's just so many missing pieces on this team. We got to figure something out, and I'm hoping they can use the final 9 games to kind of figure out what needs to be done. I'm hoping that it creates something that this team can take with them, whether it's into the off season, into trading, into the trades, into prospects, and I don't know about you guys. It bothers me that there is a dialogue that people think Keith Gretzky is part of the old boys club. I mean, I've not heard this anywhere. I've not heard anybody say they think Keith Gretzky is part of the old boys club. What I have heard people say is Keith Gretzky is part of the old management. And I think that's, quite valid. And for that reason, it's my view that he should not be the next GM of the Oilers. I don't care that his brother is Wayne Gretzky. I don't put Keith Gretzky in the old boys club era. He had nothing to, well, I couldn't say for sure, but I think he had nothing to do with the team back in the old boys club days. He might have been hanging around his brother, who knows? But he's done some work around the league, and he's kind of got to where he's at on his own, and I respect him for that. Should he be the next GM of the Oilers? In my mind, absolutely not. I think, whether they say it or not, whether they say he had a part to play in Chiarelli's moves or not, he was there. He was the assistant. If anybody had Chiarelli's ear, it's certainly the assistant. And if he couldn't speak up enough to change his mind on some of the pieces that were happening at that time, well, you know what? He's at fault. And so as I say, I've got a ton of respect for the guy. I don't have a problem with him, but I think if I'm the Oilers and I'm looking to get fans to renew their season seats, which, by the way, is not looking good on my end right now. But if I'm Cates and I put Gretzky in place, you better hope to hell that you are going to make the playoffs next year, because if you don't, anybody that's on the fence is not coming back. And it might not just be a non-renewal. You might actually lose them as a fan of this team if you keep him in place. You need to wash yourself of what's happened with this organization. You need to move on from Keith Gretzky, whatever you want to call him. And you need to go outside and find somebody that's a shrewd dealer. And, I don't care if you're making it public or not, but you better have somebody that makes a splash, right? You better have somebody who knows people around the league that can get this job done. Don't be taking any more chances, right? I mean, I know as fans, we've sat here and we've listened to all of the excuses. I've got my visit with the Oilers brass on Friday, if I choose to go. But by the sounds of it, they're just regurgitating the same thing they've regurgitated every year. And it's a little bit disappointing at this point. And I'm not ready to call it quits being an Oilers fan. In fact, I'll likely be an Oilers fan forever. How much money I continue to spend on this franchise and continue to put in the pockets of the ownership and the players will vary greatly based on what happens now. And the Oilers have to make the right decisions from here on in. They have to be smart. It might mean I'm actually, and I hesitate to say this, but I might be all right with missing the playoffs again if things were going in the right direction. I don't see though how that, we're close this year. I mean, we're in the hunt, right? So you figure that if you're in the hunt this year, then next year an improvement is being in the playoffs, right? If we were sitting in 30th place again, which I don't count that out over the next 9 games, maybe an improvement is being in the hunt. But we're in the hunt right now. And so we need to, I need to, as a fan, I need to see a market improvement in this team that they will make the playoffs next year. It's been sad, right? Like, games like tonight, are just, frustrating to no end. We're all, as fans, we love Connor McDavid. We love Leon Draisaitl. It was sad too to not see Draisaitl score tonight, and sad to not see McDavid continue his multi-point game streak. But it's just disappointment after disappointment. It carries on all the time, and it's hard to watch. I pretty much watch every game right to the end, and I didn't see the 7th goal tonight because I couldn't watch anymore. I stayed. I can't believe I watched as long as I did to see it another 4-goal game. A game like tonight, you do expect the gags to come and be a force, like just to kind of stir things up, and Cassian. But these guys like Reeder, who should have been scratched tonight, but lucked out and got in because Kara was, a late scratch. Like, you expect for these guys to show a little bit extra on a game like tonight. Show that little bit that kind of gets you in the game, right? Like do the Kachuk thing after every whistle where you go and you stand over the goalie and you make them push you out of the way. get a little bit of an asshole attitude and get in there and stir things up and get things moving. We didn't do that today, right? Like we had none of that from anybody. Well, we had, guys that, we had Cassian and we had Gags do that. We need that from, guys that really, they should be doing that, or they should be sitting riding a pine game after game. And one thing about me that you'll find, if you follow me on Twitter or wherever you follow me, is I don't use the word that player sucks or this player sucks, because for the most part, most of those players have played, if they've played one game in the NHL, they've played one game more than I've played in the NHL. So who am I to say they suck? What I can tell you, though, is I'll tell you if, they've got NHL level talent for the game today. And there's a ton of guys on this team that don't have NHL level talent right now. If you listened on to Bob Stauffer today, he had Woodcroft on today from Bakersfield, the head coach of the Bakersfield Condors. And what was interesting was they were talking about Benson, who's having a hell of a run in Bakersfield right now. He's I think it's a 15-game point streak, and I've watched a lot of those games. I subscribe to AHL TV, so I've had a chance to watch Benson play, and he continues to get his confidence at the AHL level, the pro level, and he's been playing better and better game after game, and that's great. But what Bob asked him, is Benson ready for the NHL next year? And Woodcroft said something which, the other players on the Oilers right now, the readers of the team, Gags and Cassian and Brodziak and everybody, what Woodcroft said is it's up to him if he wants to play in the NHL. And the reality is it's not been up to the players this past season or into last season, because nobody gets scratched for playing poorly. Under McClellan, and whether you liked him or not, if you were Lucic, you got promoted to the top line. Under Hitchcock, we're just not seeing guys being taken out of the lineup, right? And I like Hitchcock, but what this team needs is a little bit of accountability, right? Game after game. I think start pulling defensemen out, right? I'd love to. I thought it was a good idea to put Caleb Jones, or not Caleb Jones. I wish we had him on our team. Caleb Jones. Sorry, I was watching a bit of the Columbus Calgary game tonight, so. Caleb Jones is, by the way, a stud on D. Would love to have him on the team too, but his brother, of course, is great. And I thought that when we sent Jones down to Bakersfield, I thought that was the right thing to do. And now that Bakersfield's doing really well, I'm happy to see him stay down there. But I think as it goes next year, is we really need to push our defensemen to be better, regardless of contract. Right? I've not been critical of Russell this year, but I have been the last 3 or 4 games, at least not on the podcast. But whether I'm at the game yelling at Russell or I'm just at home watching the game. At Honestly Andy asks, Toby should have been a scratch. Was Jujar hurt? Yeah. I don't know. I haven't looked into what happened to Jujar. I can only assume that he injured himself, maybe in warm up or somewhere. But yeah, Toby Reeder was supposed to be a scratch. If I'm not mistaken, the first time he'd be a healthy scratch. How you go full season? I mean, we had what's his name was scratched, and then he came back and scored 3. It's not coming to me, but I mean, there are superstars get scratched in this league, right? To show them that they need to be better. And why are the Oilers any different? I don't care about depth. What I care about is accountability, right? And it's not like we just got Curry and Gambardella, right? These guys have been sitting in the farm forever. So, you bring them up at any time, and you scratch the guys that need to be accountable. Make them sit and watch in the press box for a couple games. How Toby Reeder doesn't have 20 shots on net every night until he gets a goal is beyond me. You know what? I'm going to look up his stats right now, because what I'm curious about is how many shots on net Toby Reeder's actually getting, right? Like, is this guy, is he getting any shots on net? Because if he's not, well, then, why is he even playing? Right? Like, why are we constantly rewarding, right, like this kind of mediocrity on this team with ice time? Start rewarding the guys in Bakersfield that really deserve it and will want that paycheck. I can tell you that, somebody got upset when they called Gambardella up. He'd definitely rather play for the Oilers, even on a losing team, than stay down in Bakersfield. All of these guys, and any one of us that's played hockey, would want to be playing in the NHL. Reeder's sitting now in 59 games played with 78 shots. Yeah, and honestly, Andy, press box Toby, exactly. And like I said, I'm not going to say he sucks, right? Like, this guy's played more in the NHL than I have. He's scored more goals. He's got more assists than I'll ever have in the NHL. But does he have the talent to be on an NHL team today? No, he doesn't. There are guys that have played, if I look down the Oilers lineup, we've got Bouchard has more goals than Toby Reeder. So you getting excited about Evan Bouchard yet? Well, you know what? Next year he should probably play in the AHL, because we need to start grooming these guys to be real players. I've got the other half of this podcast that he joins in every now and again. Mr. Mike Dursa on the line. Let's just see. Let me tag you in here, Mike.
Hey, how are you?
Good, you? Well, I mean, after the game, I don't know. But...
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it's a huge surprise that the funeral processions can begin, but still doesn't make it any easier, I guess. Like, seeing Connor's face there. Don't remember if it was after the 6th or the 7th goal. It's hard to put them all in place, but he kind of did a curl route, like, behind the net and towards the blue line. And yeah, it was, I think, realization for him starting to set in that it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, it was. That was one of the more disappointing things of the night was, just not seeing Connor get a point tonight. For sure. And Connor was off tonight too, right? Like, he didn't. He's had better games, I thought, but I wouldn't blame this on him. I did. The one thing I noticed about St. Louis, though, is their sticks. Like, how do you get a puck past those guys? Like, that's a good team. I think I'm undervaluing the St. Louis Blues because I've not even considered them as a playoff contender, like as a playoff or Stanley Cup contender. But I've watched them a couple times this year since they, turned their season around, and they're a really good team. They could do some serious damage. I wouldn't want to play them first round. That's for sure. They could beat Nashville maybe as the underdog. Maybe this is their year.
They actually have a pretty good blue line, and there's a good collection of talent up front for them. And they're getting good goaltending. Connor basically scored, and I think it was Pietrangelo batted it out of midair like,
it was Parayko. Parayko, yeah. Parayko batted it out of midair. Yeah. That was. I was at the edge of my seat there, and it's funny, a game like tonight, right? Like you have, you really go the first period where we might as well have just spotted them 4, and then played the second period of hockey. We could have spotted them the first half of the game and given them 4 goals, and then played the second half. We played 10 minutes of hockey there after Maroon did us. All I can think is Maroon did us a bit of a favor and told Cassian, "Hey, look, buddy, like you got one chance at this, and take it." And so, they drop the mitts, and we get a little bit of a spark, and then we go into the third, and I think the how different is the game when we're driving down the ice. 4 guys on St. Louis. Nugent Hopkins does a little toe drag and then completely misses the net. And a 4-2 game. And then it becomes 4-3, or it would have been 4-3 if he just hit the net.
Right.
Those moments in a hockey game mean so very much. And while you can say some of the game is luck, I look at those moments in a hockey game as being, clutch moments for players, right? That's when, a guy like, if Connor McDavid has the puck in that instance, he might be more likely to score given the the magnitude of that particular situation and what that means to the game. Nuge, I love Nuge. I never want to see the guy go. I'm a big fan, but he's not lived that sort of clutch situation yet. I mean, he's not. He just hasn't seen it enough. He's not a Draisaitl or a McDavid with that much skill, and so just happened to be him at that moment in time. Yeah. Anyway, I wish.
Yeah. It I don't know, how comfortable are you with the goaltending heading into next year?
Not at all. I mean, I've done everything that I can in my heart to give Koskinen a chance. Right? You just think that eventually, he'll get it together. There's something I talked to a guy. I don't know if I told you this, but there's a fellow that actually played as an emergency backup for the Oilers, and I know him he's a colleague of mine, let's say. And he was a goalie. He played actually for the Edmonton Oil Kings for a while. And I said to him, I think there's got to be something wrong with the goaltending coaching in Edmonton, specifically Dustin Schwartz. And because you see other guys in this in the league that seemingly go from nothing to something. Right, goaltenders do that, but we just haven't had that in Edmonton. In fact, we've had a lot of goalies go from something to nothing, and outside of a few sort of highlight performances, if you think of what's his name he's playing in the Scrivens. When Scrivens had that game, was it against San Jose where he had saved 80 shots or whatever?
Yeah.
How many times, how many games how many games have the Oilers had in, this past 13 years that, outside of, Rolison, when's the last time we've had a goaltender like steal games for us? And it wasn't, Talbot didn't steal any games for us when we made the playoffs 3 years ago. In fact, I always thought he was kind of, he was just doing a little bit of the work that he does. He was solid, but I don't remember him stealing any games. Like, when's the last time you remember we had a game stolen for us? Do you remember one?
Well, if you're talking absolute larceny, yeah, you'd probably have to go back to Ben Scrivens. I think he had 65 saves.
Yeah, I know it was up there, and it was a record, right? Yeah.
And that would be the game I would point to. I mean, Mikko earlier in the season, I think he rattled off 4 or 5 shutouts, right?
Yeah.
But were they actually absolute games? I don't know. I think I would go back to Ben Scrivens, honestly.
Well, and that's the thing, right? Is like 59 saves is what he had. So 59 shots, San Jose, January 30th, 2014. So there you go. So that to me is the last time we had a game stolen for us. And I feel like, there's so many little pieces of this team that we just don't have right. And goaltending's one of them. I don't know. I'm really curious if, and Glenn Moss says he's been questioning the goaltending coach for a couple of years. And he also suggests maybe Koskinen's feeling a little tired right now. We gotta do something, right? Like we, as an organization, and this is, this is why I don't know if you're listening earlier, but I went on a bit of a thing about Keith Gretzky and him. I don't feel like he's the old boys club. Like that to me, I don't know where that started. I've not heard anybody say, and I've not heard anybody say they think he's part of the old boys club. What I have heard people say, which I believe, is he is part of the old management, i.e., Peter Chiarelli, right? He was his assistant. And for that very reason, I don't think he should be back on the team. I don't associate him with the old boys club at all. That's not why I don't want him as GM. I don't want him as GM because he was the assistant to the GM we just let go, right? He was there when the decisions were made. I don't care what part he had. I just think that if you put him in place, if there's any problems whatsoever, well, then at some point somebody's going to tell us, Nicholson or whoever is going to say, well, you know what, we made a mistake. Turns out he was more involved in the process than we thought, right? Get somebody new.
Yeah.
And with that somebody new, they should also be looking at, the other things that could be, broken, like goaltending coaching, which is where this started from. But anyway, your thoughts. I'm talking a lot.
No, that's okay. It's your show, man. I think, you've got to be thorough with investigating and kind of taking a Scooby-Doo, looking under every, rock and leaf that there is to find out all the problems in this organization and address them all. I've got issues myself with pro scouting. We've seen the fruit of their work, and I haven't been impressed by much of it. Really, if you go back quite a ways, the only trade that we've really done okay with is acquiring Sam Gagner. That's the only thing that I have that's taken us in a positive direction that's been done in a while here. So pro scouting for me needs to be improved. And Laurent Brossoit goes to Winnipeg and he's flourishing.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You can point to Winnipeg having a better defense. That's there's probably element of truth to that, but he's still winning games when they were missing Bufflin. So
And,
you know,
and I
I
go
wouldn't
back
put
to
I wouldn't put it all on Winnipeg's defense.
and I go
So
back
yeah,
to
I
that
would.
thing though, where goalies need to steal a game once in a while, right? Like just once in a
Yeah,
while. They don't. It's not like
right.
you expect your goalie to be Dominic Hasek game after game or Kiprasov game after game. But at least you add 2-3 wins to our season where the goalie has stolen those games, and we're at 35 wins. Right, we're at 77 points, and we're sitting there, and then we're really competing for a wild card spot. But we've not had that, right? And how important is that? So I wasn't critical enough of the Koskinen signing. I'll be the first to admit that. I thought maybe they saw something in him that I didn't see. It turns out they didn't. It was just plain idiocy. Yeah, but I mean,
Yeah, and
yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
they're in a position now where like, what do they get for coverage for the guy? And that's a concern I've got. Like, I would, I want to keep most of the guys in Bakersfield down for this year and let them enjoy having fun and all that. But I'd like to see them bring up Starrett for a game just to see what he's like, to know if you could, trust that going into next year or something, because they got to figure it out. I mean, Mikko can't, win them 60 or play 60 games next year. I just don't see it, so they need some coverage for him.
Yeah, so my feeling, and I've watched Starrett game after game, and I was a big. So I want to say that I was a big fan of Starrett prior to him even coming to Bakersfield when he was in the ECHL. He played one game, one season, had a hell of a game in the AHL, and I suspected at that point that he might come up and show people exactly who he was, and he's done just that. But I can tell you my own feeling on him, having seen enough of his games, is I don't think he's quite ready. The game down there, of course, is just it's unbelievably different. As you can imagine. I mean, we, as Oilers fans, we probably know our minor league team better than most people, mostly because we have to, because we're always hoping for for somebody to come in and save the day, and they haven't done that. And you notice like guys like Curry, who are have been 20 goal scorers for the past couple seasons in the AHL, who comes up and he does well, but he's at best a third liner, maybe a fourth liner on an Oilers team that is really not full of overwhelming us with talent. And Gambardella, at times has been a little bit lost out there. They're good players, and they probably deserve, a shot, and they still need some time, and they need to do that. But so my overall point is, Starrett is good. I don't think he's NHL ready. I'd probably take Stolarz before I take him right now. But this is his first. This is Starrett's first season in the NHL or in the AHL. So I guess one thing, to your point is, could we see him a couple games? Sure, why not? When do they start? I think they start their AHL playoffs, so pretty quick, right? Like they, right now we are.
I'd have to look, but I think they're probably not that far away now. I think probably in the next week or so.
Yeah, actually, it looks like last year they started roughly about the same time as the NHL. I know WHL starts right away. Anyway, you know what? I guess we probably still do have a little bit of time before Starrett could, if he could play. But regardless, it really is no point in calling him up right now. I think as much as I would love to see him, I think if they can, you start Stolarz down the stretch so that you have some options with him as a UFA. And, give Koskinen if, Glenn, if you're right and he's tired, then, you give Koskinen a bit of a break. And what bugged me tonight? Sorry, I'm kind of all over the place, but you got a guy who, after the night in Vegas, where everybody went glove side, right? High glove. And where everybody in the world started, tweeting about it, writing about it, talking about it on, NHL TV. And you come into a game and the first goal that's scored against you is high glove side. Like to me, you're just not listening, or somebody's not listening. Like Dustin Schwartz, the goaltending coach, maybe he's not listening. I don't know, or maybe he's not even watching the games. But I figure, like, at least for the first period, that's probably not a goal that should be scored, right? Like, do you know what I mean? Like, is it me, or is that like maybe I as a goalie, if that's the case, I'm just standing up the whole way through. And
I'd like,
yeah, I don't know.
I'd like to see a little Bill Ranford in a guy that's almost 7 feet tall on skates.
Yeah, absolutely.
You'd have nothing to shoot at. I mean, he's a sheet of plywood, really. So stand up and be a wall. I don't get the obsession with being down in the crouch and hugging the one post, giving everybody the far side and taking away really what should be his advantage. I don't get it. And to me, that speaks to goalie coaching. Like,
well, it's not anything different than what we've seen from every other goalie that's played for the Oilers, right? Like Talbot,
yes, exact same thing.
Yeah, if you go back and you're yelling and screaming at the TV, then the same thing with Talbot was always, why is he going down so early? Why is the top end of the and goal scorers in the NHL know that the best spot to go is that little area over the shoulder, right by the ear, right? I shoot for that all the time. The problem is I only hit it once out of every 10 shots, and they hit it, 5 out of every 10 shots, and it equates to 5 goals every time they hit that spot when it's Oilers goaltending. So yeah, Glenn, I'm on board with you. I think Mike, we can all safely jump on the maybe it's time for a new goaltending coach. By the way, this Dustin Schwartz, he comes from the Golden Bears and the Oil Kings. I don't know that he ever, prior to the Oilers, ever had a job with an NHL franchise. So, I don't know. Is there a site that says goaltending coaches of the NHL? I know Eddie Belfour is on there. There's a goaltending coach index here. So Anaheim's got Dwayne Rollison, right? Sean Burke for Phoenix with of course Kemper, who is a bit of a star right now, right? You got Bob Essenza in Boston, Andrew Allen, and we've got Dustin Schwartz. So there you go. There is a site. It's the goaltending index. Here, I am going to put this into the Periscope feed there, so we can all have a look. But this is the the goaltending index. I know, as I said, Bill Ranford's in L.A., and of course, Quick has had a pretty successful career there. Bob Mason in Minnesota. I I just can't help but think, right? Like, goaltending. A guy like Koskinen, he seems to move well, right? Like he seems to move half decent, and he's
I
got
don't know.
he's
I
got
don't
the
know. I'm not
tools.
sold on his movement. Sometimes he has a hard time with that hard push, like across to get in the way of one timers. It's almost like he falls down. I've seen him have trouble a few times there, and I'm not sold that his skating is actually great.
Oh yeah, well, and maybe that's. I can tell you his ability to play the puck is absolutely awful, right? Like he goes around the net to stop the puck, and it's almost as if he's flailing at it.
I think
Yeah.
on that front, though, I think he's a better puck handler than Cam was.
Well, that doesn't say a whole hell of a lot
No,
about.
it doesn't. But
Yeah. But yeah,
he
no,
doesn't do that. You know how Curtis Joseph used to do that reverse like glove hand thing. Mikko's got his glove kind of going the right way, and it's not like a backhand all the time. So
nothing was
he
better
can play it on.
than the Rollis
He can play it on.
So let's I think maybe it's time the Oilers look at that. But I think like we talk about rebuilds with this team, and I hate bringing that up, but I think it's time to rebuild the front office, right? Like start rebuilding the parts of this team, right from personal training to goalie coaching to everything about this team. I know when Cates originally acquired the franchise, one of the first things he did was he hired all of his personal trainers, his own personal trainers, to be the personal trainers for the club, right? But it's time to invest in this team in areas that they're not investing in today. And, get the right personal trainers in there. You remember about 2 years after Cates came in and his trainer was on there, and they came out for this showing where they were absolutely, awful, like the New Jersey game, let's just say, or like tonight's game, where they looked tired and they looked everything. And I remember, I can't remember who the GM was at the time, probably Mac T. And they said, well, the problem was personal training, right? Was that that they actually should have had an off day and they didn't have one. I think it goes back probably 15 to 20 years ago now, the Montreal Canadiens had, injury after injury after injury, and they fired the whole training staff. And the following year, they were, they did better in terms of injury wise. My point being is that this is not the game of hockey is more than the players now. Any hockey stats guy will tell you there's a lot of stats work that needs to go into it. I'm not 100% sold as some of them are, but I do believe in some of it. You need a good stats guy. You need a good, you need a good goaltending coach. You need some good trainers, right? You need good assistants, right? You need the right coach for the team, right? Braley says Travis Wade. Not familiar with him for personal training. Yeah, honestly, Andy. I'm not saying honestly, Andy, but at honestly, Andy says Eakins was all about the personal training. Still awful. Oh yeah, Glenn Moss is Nicholson already said it was the water. Yeah. But at the end of the day, right? Like this is a team that hasn't done much outside of change the coach year after year. And then, we really kind of were unfortunate to have Chiarelli in place. And I was on I wasn't one of the guys that thought it was a bad idea to hire him. I actually thought when they got him, I was pretty excited about it. But he just single-handedly dismantled the team. Well, let's not say single-handedly, because I just finished telling you that I thought Keith Gretzky had a part to play. So he did it. Let's say that I believe he did it with help, and that's his staff. What would you do? I mean, if you had your hand at the reins, you're president of the organization, you're sitting in Bob Nicholson's spot right now. Number one, GM. I never asked you. Would you take Gretzky?
Kind of, I guess, where I come from is that you need to find every single person that has hockey intelligence and hockey IQ and interview them and be thorough, have a direction what you want to ask them, what you're looking for. And that's kind of, I guess, my question is, I don't know if they even know what they're looking for. So I mean, they need to have a direction. They need to have a model. If I'm them, I think I would try to, obviously what Tampa Bay is doing right now seems to be working. So I would probably try to adopt that model and duplicate it and go from there. So the first guy I think I would be on the phone with, and you might get a no, but is Yzerman. I think you start there and you work out from there. I would zero in on him, but you have to have a contingency plan, because I'm pretty sure he's got eyes on Detroit.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
So you kind of go out with your umbrella from there, but I would start there and see if you can get anything out of Steve that might help you anyway. But I certainly don't, have one guy in mind. I think it has to be a wide net that you cast, and you go through it and you narrow it down, and you might want to bring guys in for a second interview and then a third. It can't just be, okay, you're the guy. We've done that before. It hasn't worked. It has to be a thorough, extensive search, and you take it from there. This one-hit wonder kind of idea, that to me, it's no good. If at the end of the day you interview 50 people and Keith Gretzky is still amongst your people, I can stomach that. I can handle that. But what I can't handle is just handing the job to him because he's here. That's too convenient. That's too easy. And Connor and Leon and a few of these guys and the fans deserve better.
Yeah, I'm 100% though, and I'm not even, I'm usually, if you know me, you've talked to me enough to know that I can typically look at things from both angles, or normally will, and give people the benefit of the doubt. In this particular instance, unequivocally, I think that hiring Keith Gretzky as the GM is the absolute 100% wrong thing to do. And I say that with respect for Keith Gretzky, but it's time now to get somebody new, somebody that is completely connected in this game. And to your point, you start narrowing it down if you haven't already, right? And honestly, Andy says, what do you think about Mark Hunter? To be fair, I haven't really thought much about that. You?
Yeah. No, I don't really. Other than Steve Yzerman, I don't think there's anybody that's leaps and bounds ahead of anybody else. So I think you need to be extensive in your search, and you need to see what these guys are going to say. I think what's probably almost even more important than the next GM, though, honestly, is doing a real forensic audit of every single area of the franchise. I'm not in the camp of everybody in the OBC needs to go. My personal philosophy is that there's a lot of other great professional sports franchises in Major League Baseball, NBA, NFL that do have sort of an old boys club. If guys are rot and they're not helping propel this forward, though, then they absolutely need to go. I kind of don't want to see a situation where we're throwing the baby out with the bathwater just because. If we've obviously improved our minor league team, well, I guess they're still a professional organization, but our farm club. So who's responsible for that? I think those guys probably have earned the right to stick around a little bit here. But, how much influence does McTavish have down there versus up here? If you listen to what people are saying from the feedback we've been getting from the season ticket holders luncheons, that McTavish is pretty much strictly involved in Bakersfield. Whether you believe that or not, I don't know, but somebody's got to find that out. And if that's kind of something that he's had a fair hand in, then I think he's earned the right to stick around because it's improving down there.
Yeah.
Is Keith highly responsible for that as well? Then maybe he deserves a place in the organization. But from where I come from, whoever's got their hands in pro scouting has failed. I don't consider Dustin Schwartz myself as getting it done here. I've seen too many goalies fail here, and I've said this before, and I'll say it to you. I think as soon as Cam Talbot lands an actual job in the NHL, because I don't think he has one in Philly, but I think 6 months from after he gets kind of reacclimated wherever he's going to be next year, he'll find his game again. I just know it.
Yeah, no, and you might be right. I'm not. Well, as far as Cam Talbot's concerned, no, I was never a big fan. To be fair, I thought he had a decent season when we made it to the playoffs, which seems like forever ago. But I just, I thought it was decent. I didn't think that it was. I didn't think it was worthy of all the praise that he got, but whatever. Right? It doesn't matter. It's in the past, and Talbot's on. I guess he started tonight for Philly. Philly's had 8 goaltenders start all season, so he finally got. Or is he starting tomorrow night? I know I just read something about Talbot starting for Philly, and they were going to have. A record. No, he didn't start. Carter Hart started, so it must be tomorrow night or shortly. Anyway, really doesn't matter. Point is we just have not had anything in the way of goaltending. But you're right. I mean, we and this started because at Honestly Andy asked about Mark Hunter. I hadn't personally thought about Mark Hunter. I think, he was part of the London Knights organization, which, obviously has, and also he's connected. I think he, given that he's had some experience with Toronto and otherwise, I think he'd be as qualified as any that I've heard. Brad McCrimmon, of course, is up there. It seems like Stauffer, who always knows more than the rest of us because he travels with the team. He's employed by the team. He talks to these guys on a daily basis, but. Stauffer seems to be hinting at the fact that Ken Holland, if Yzerman goes back to Detroit, Ken Holland comes to Edmonton as a president of hockey operations, and Keith Gretzky gets pulled into the GM role. Whatever the case, I just keep going back, and I think my fear of this whole Keith Gretzky thing stems from maybe an over listening of Bob Stauffer. And all respect to to Bob. I think he does a fine job, but I'm listening to that, and over again, he seems to be prepping us for an inevitable conclusion that Keith Gretzky is going to get the job. To me, it just, I want somebody to admit that they've fucked up, and that it's time to make some serious changes in this organization. And whatever way they go, it's got to be all about change, and not on the personnel, like not at the player personnel level. I think, right, like that's going to come, right, like, but you got to make small changes there. We are, to be fair, I mean, we're in the playoff hunt, right? We were, other than a couple of bad losses, we'd be right up there, right? It's not like we're not sitting at the bottom of the barrel just yet. So, as I said quite a bit earlier, maybe a half hour ago or so, improvement for this team is playoffs. It's not fighting for the playoffs. It is playoffs, right? This year, we're fighting for the playoffs. Next year, we should be in the playoffs. And we've got some prospects, and we've got some other things that it's altogether possible. Hey, Mike, I'm going to probably call it a night here shortly. Thanks for joining. For those that have been listening, of course, we're going to be skating April 6th here in Calgary at the Max Bell Arena. Mike, I want to do another draft when we get there, when we get enough players. We could still use some players, so I'm going to say we've probably got about 12 skaters so far, and I've got about 6 or 8 that'll come for sure. So we'll have 10 aside. I think ideally I'd like to have 13 aside, so we've still got room for some more. And then, of course, anybody that's listening, you can also donate at www.autismcalgary.com/OilersLive/ and so 100% of donations are going to go to Autism Calgary. And there's no registration fee. If you just want to come out and play hockey, and you can't put together $5 to donate, I'm fine with that. And I'm not even tracking who's donating. So if you donate through the site, that's great. I'll know at the end of the day. I'll know how much has been donated, but I won't know by who. And so, if you want to come out and just play some hockey and join us in our misery as Oilers fans, please do. If you can't, can't find the registration, just send me a message on Twitter or go to Oilers.live. There's a link there, www.oilers.live, and you can register there. Mike, is it just going to be you, or you got some of your kids coming out?
Noah's going to play again. Max will come. Brady's going to be here at work, but yeah.
Perfect. Awesome. Okay. Well, it should be good. We've got 2 goalies this time, and it should be a lot of fun. I don't know if you've ever played at Max Bell, but it's not too far from the Dome. Were you able to score some tickets?
Yeah, I got.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, up in the press area, or press level, they call them.
Yeah, we're on the roof trusses, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's unreal. My hope is that, assuming that the Oilers don't go 9 straight and somehow eke out a playoff win. So and I think that's a safe assumption that won't be the potential playoff hopeful game that we hoped it would be. I do hope that it is the game that knocks Calgary out of first place, and puts them solidly in second to play Vegas in the first round. I really honestly think Vegas is my favorite coming out of the West. So we'll see what happens there. Any
Yeah,
last
with
words?
the help,
Sorry.
Fleury, that they could do some damage. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Any last words? And before you say that, though, I want to thank everybody for tuning in and listening. We had a number of people both on the Simple Radio app, which you can download and listen at Oilers.live. So there's radio, there's Twitch, there's Facebook, there's YouTube, there's all these places. We had listeners across all platforms. Thanks, everybody. And Mike, take us home, and we'll end our night. Anything?
Yeah. Good night, Mike.
Nope. All right. Okay. Good. Thanks, everybody. Have a good one, and stay safe. See. Maybe next game we'll go live again.